what could be the implications of AI, these ethical biases not being taken care of?
On the bias side of things and all, because it's a generative model which we build now, that is primarily because it's a end user what they want, right? If they want a particular model with a particular kind of race, a particular kind of ethnicity, a particular kind of attributes, it's their choice. The algorithm or what basically runs to generate that uh, is kind of, we try to make sure that there is no bias, but it's also at the end of the day the user's choice to generate the persona according to their preference.
Namaste. Good morning. How
Good
are you
morning.
doing?
Good.
Bangalore is spared the Mumbai rains.
It's so true. It started raining here also, but not that much.
I
Yeah.
was just going through your profile and reading of your general interest, and I'm enthralled by the fact that your company NeuroPixel was amongst the first ones to use AI generative models.
Yes, that's true. We have started working on the generative model, deep generative models, in 2021. That time we were working primarily with autoencoders and generative adversarial networks, GAN, and later we of course shifted towards a diffusion-based stack. So that time used to have difficult to kind of convince our investors that kind of what we are building, whether kind of building synthetic human beings, modify their attributes, kind of putting apparels onto them. So it was difficult to convince our investors that what we are building, and now also it is difficult to convince our investors that how we are differentiating.
So,
So yes.
with your hands-on experience on this work of AI generative models, how did
Yes.
you take care of ethical issues, Amritendu?
Yeah. So before I think get into that, so if you try to understand, right, that broadly, like what are the kind of the ethics and kind of what do you mean by ethics in AI? Now, there is a great book by Cathy O'Neill called Weapons of Math Destruction. It's try to kind of say if what are the risks that if we leave everything to the algorithm and there is no human process involved in that, right? Now, I mean, some of the great examples you can think of like feedback loops and all. What happens is, let's say you watch particular YouTube video, right? It could be of certain kind of content and all. Now, the algorithm, the way it works is, the more you watch it, so more it will be tuned to kind of give you recommendations of the same sort of kind of the videos which you have watched based on your history, etc., etc. So, let's say I watch certain content videos, so the probability that I'll get recommendations of similar content is significantly higher. That calls feedback loop, right? Now, in the same way, so I was just reading about it, and then there are like these meetups, and so there is a probability that, so let's say the domain attending a meetup or tech meetup is less. Now, if I have a recommendation engine which takes care of the gender as a predictor variable, now what will happen in it will start giving less recommendation to the women to attend the tech meetups, and then they will attend less. So you'll have again, you understand, it will have a kind of a spiral effect. So they will have a attend less, they will see the more less data. So more they will basically, you're excluding the entire kind of set. And now of course there is bias. Now bias can be kind of broadly from the historical bias which is there in the society. Then it could be representation bias. So you try to basically what the data set that you create, that representation is not properly, so that's a representation bias. Then the measurement bias, in the measurement also the way you measure, and could be aggregation, the way you aggregate the data and all. And at the final, even the deployment bias or in the evaluation bias. And then at the last will be disinformation. So which is also very important, because if this is information with the which you are training the algorithm, because at the end of the day, any ML algorithm is learned from the data. The data is not correct. There is disinformation in the data. There is nothing kind of to do much. I mean, from an algorithm side, so you have to make sure that the data quality and there is no disinformation. Now coming to NeuroPixel and all, we try to take care of from the very beginning and all. We always have tried to take care of the kind of, while creating the data sets and all, we try to take care of the right representations and all. We also try to take care of, like, probably to have a proper consent from all for the data set that we were creating, right? From the model that it should be used for the training purpose. This is the purpose, and not for any other. You clearly explain them, get their consent and all, and then you create the data sets and all, which we try to have a representation, which broadly, of course, meet our criteria, as well as a kind of have a kind of symmetric representation, right? That's one thing. However, on the bias side of things and all, because in that it's a generative model which we built, now that is primarily because it's a end user who what they want, right? If they want a particular model with a particular kind of race, a particular kind of ethnicity, a particular kind of attributes, it's their choice. The algorithm or what basically runs to generate that is that is kind of, we try to make sure that there is no bias, but it's also at the end of the day the user's choice to generate the persona according to their preference. And also we try to have people involved in that entire process to ensure that, I mean, that if there are certain errors and all happening by the output of the AI, we rectify it with the human interventions and all. Through the edit process and all before sending it to the customer.
So it's fascinating to hear you and understand that there, biases could be across a spectrum, not just
Yes.
gender, but disinformation and others.
Yes.
You are taking steps, but what if one loses control? What could be the implications of AI, these ethical biases not being taken care of?
This is very true, and this is true for any technology, right? Again, I'll, there is a beautiful book by Edwin Black on IBM and Holocaust. So, so basically, it talks about the contribution of IBM and helping the Third Reich and all on to kind of at the time of doing census, and how do they categorize Jews and others, right? And how that helped kind of to facilitate Holocaust and all, right? So it's any technology, it is there, and that's responsibility to the entire tech community who are building. There is no denial of that. It is always extremely, extremely important to kind of be aware that where it can go wrong. I mean, there is a center of Markula Center of Applied Ethics, Santa Clara University. So they define it, the kind of ethics, as like kind of well-founded standards of rights and wrong that prescribe what humans ought to do. Correct. So I mean, it can go wrong. There's no denial of the fact, and that's why it is always important to have certain checks and balances.
What would I'm getting a little scared also, right? At one level, there's an excitement at the kind of
Yes.
opportunities that AI brings in, especially if you
Yes.
look at it as a friend and not
Yes.
as someone who takes away your job. But
Eh,
on the other hand, what I'm understanding from you that there things could go just wrong if you don't
yes.
take care of the ethics part.
Yes. 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 Absolutely. I mean, think about it. Like same for the nuclear weapon.
Mm.
You, it can be mass destruction. It can be also a huge source of power.
So
It's
how
all dip.
Yeah. How do you see your participation in the FEAi committee as something that feeds into your own passion for ethical AI?
Yes, so I mean, I think the FEAi community is a great things to do
Mm.
because it is very new, and it, again I'm saying it's all responsibility to all of us. Now, I expect that FEAi community to work closely with other bodies like NASCOM, and NASCOM is doing a fantastic job. Yesterday I was in another discussion with NASCOM Responsible AI. They're doing a fantastic job to work with other bodies and of course with the government and to come up with a very kind of framework and all prescriptive framework, and sometimes could be kind of directive as well, um, to basically have certain things, these things to take care, right? The kind of I'm talking about the ethical framework which each organization should follow. However, there's a fine line that it also need to make sure that it does not compromise the innovation. What I'm trying to say is that uh, too much of regulations also kind of damp the innovation. So it's
Mm.
basically a fine balance, or maybe kind of for a kind of a large organization to be more who are kind of initially at the building phase, it has to be slightly
Mm.
kind of certain flexibilities and all. or maybe at the time of training, or when the algorithm is learning, because that's also another part, right? It's very important. So Professor Andrew Ng once mentioned this, that, and which is I completely subscribe, that like humans also learn from a lot of data, right? And we go to websites, we read so many books, and when I write, so all the readers, all the sorry writers who have influenced me, I will be influenced by that. When I write, that style would come, right? Let's say whoever the my favorite writers, right, from the kind of Charles Dickens to Arundhati Roy, so that would influence me in some way. Now, the important part of it, right, is that so I am not restricted, right, and I'll have my kind of own way of writing also while getting influence from all this. The same thing applies to AI as well. If I restrict that for learning and all, then the learning would be kind of constrained. It will not be able to learn to the kind of the potential, and that would basically kind of also hamper the intelligence level that it at least aim to achieve. However, while inferencing and all, right, that's the same way, right? We learn all the words and all, but when you write, when you infer, we put all the guardrails in the check and all, right? What is right, what is wrong, what it should not harm anyone. So the broad, the kind of protection and all is being made, which is my intention to write and all those things, right? The same way when I infer from a model, those guardrails are much more important. So not from the learning side more, from the inference side, because training side, that learning could be dampened and all. So, but again, I mean, the five community, that's my broad expectation, that you work with other bodies and then come up with a kind of very kind of framework, and could be both prescriptive and directive, and then work with government as well to implement this.
I mean, my last question is, what would you, sort of tell the Gen Z who are so much into AI, what do they really need to be careful? What should they do when things go horribly wrong?
So my only thing is just to be, I mean, think, right? Like any other tool which you use, right? Right? When you use it and all, so there is a chance, like if we do not use without thinking, it's a tool, right? It can help us to a large extent, and it's a very kind of initial days also, it's go a long way, long way. There is no denial of that fact as well, right? And the initial days are so exciting, so you can think how much it could, but like any other tool, if we do not use it without thinking, then it can go wrong, horribly wrong. So whatever we are using, right? You just think, and it should be a kind of an assistance, not a replacement. These are the two things which are very, very important, right? So I mean, the way we see, like, is always people plus AI, not only AI. And I kind of come from that school of thought. To give you an example, like if I let's say, if I ask kind of AI tool to write a letter to someone and all, and I just without reviewing it I send it, then that's on me. It can assist me in helping in writing and all, absolutely fine, but at the same time you have a review, right? And then you modify it, have your own style or whatever. You make sure that it basically represents your message before you send it. If that's not there, that, and however that also would be, I expect to be hyper personalized a lot in near future. But anyway, so it's always that check whether I want to do it. That, so there are two things, right? In the free society and all, everything should be available, and I completely subscribe to that. Everything should be available, but at the same time, then it's in the Linux and all, you always used to say that it's with great power come great responsibility. So it's always the responsibility also is on us.
Yeah. So if I may say, what you're talking is you're to Gen Z, basically, to be very careful, be responsible as to how you use AI, and always
Yes.
look at it as an assistance and not a replacement.
Yes, and apply your own intelligence as well. I mean, that's what we are. We are, and it does not replace everything.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much for your time, Amritendu, and all the best to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good day.